Dan, thanks for your time. Great to speak to you. I want to start with what I guess may be a bit of a negative, and that's what happened just over a week ago. Josh Taylor against Jack Cattermole. What are your thoughts on what happened that night?
It was a close fight to me, and I've certainly heard from people all through social media, and certainly read and seen videos and comments from people thinking it's the worst robbery that they ever saw. I just didn't see it like that, and I'm not alone. I thought Cattermole won the fight, but I had it 113 to 112, so it's a 1-point fight. And when I even if I'm not ringside, when I'm scoring these fights, I'm still like writing down or typing in the scores, and I'll make my own little notations about a close round or a swing round, that type of thing. And there was probably at least 3 rounds in that fight I felt like that definitely could have gone either way. It depends on who you're giving them to. And so, it's not like the scores were that outrageous. Now, I've seen cards where, there's a guy that everybody thinks won, but one judge has some very big outlier score where, it's like, how could you do it like that? Where, you might think the fight went one way or the other, but one of the judges has it, 10 rounds to 2, and that seems very implausible. This was one of those fights with Josh Taylor and Cattermole, where there were several close rounds. And in the end, the judges, although they disagreed on the result, still had the fight relatively close in terms of their scoring. So I didn't quite get like the massive outcry. I can appreciate where Jack Cattermole's coming from. The guy waited 2 years for the opportunity. He stepped aside to allow the Josh Taylor fight for the undisputed championship to take place against Jose Ramirez. And he had his big moment, and he performed a lot better than a lot of people thought. And he did very, very, very well. And, I know it stings and he lost, but he put himself in position certainly for another title opportunity, whether it's a rematch with Josh Taylor, whether it's for a title that becomes vacant should he vacate and move up in weight. But he did himself very proud, and his fans. Josh, I think, would be the first to admit it was not his best night. Like I said, I thought he lost a close fight, but I don't think that it warranted like the British board saying we're going to investigate and, making it out like it's, one of the worst robberies. This is not Timothy Bradley getting the win against Manny Pacquiao. Let's put it like that.
Do you think there's maybe a British problem when it comes to judging? Yes, you don't feel like it was a robbery. You had issues maybe a few weeks ago, people were unhappy with the cards in the John Ryder fight, when some felt that perhaps he didn't win that fight, but he got the result as the home fighter. Or is it something we see around the world? Is it not something just unique to the UK?
I thought Danny Jacobs beat John Ryder in a close fight also, but I don't think it's limited just to what takes place in the UK whatsoever. Believe me, I've been doing this a long time, James, and I've seen plenty of terrible scorecards, both in the United States for fights I've been at, fights I've watched on television, fights I've watched from around the world, frankly. It is not a problem that is limited to the United States or to Great Britain or to anywhere else in Europe or Asia or South America, you name it. Boxing is a subjective sport. First of all, people have to remember that. I also like to make the point I've talked to people about judging plenty of times. There are times where you could see an exceedingly close fight. And I know this is kind of opposite of what I said just a couple minutes ago, but this is the point though. You can see a fight where you have 10 or 12 extremely close rounds. And you're just giving it to the same guy because he's just eking out the rounds each time. So when you add up your score at the end of the fight, you might have a scorecard that does read 10 rounds to 2. But that doesn't mean it's a wipeout because every single 3-minute session was close and competitive. And boxing is judged obviously on individual 3-minute sessions. So it's conceivable for you to have a wipeout score in a fight that in actuality was awfully competitive. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened, in this case or that case, but that's something that can happen from time to time. Usually those judges would find around here, around there in a fight that close that would go to either guy. But I think maybe if I've heard some people suggest that there should be more judges to score, which would, make it more scores to go through so you'd have less chance of this happening. I don't necessarily agree with that, only because to me, it's just another opportunity for there to be more bad scorecards, the potential for more problems. Where do you put them? Do you there's 4 sides of the ring. You see, 3 judges on 3 sides, and then you have obviously the folks that are on the commission and doing television, et cetera, taking up the space on the 4th side. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know that I'd like to see it improved. But I don't think the impetus for that is Josh Taylor versus Jack Cattermole. Again, I did not find it to be massively controversial, even though I thought the Cattermole, should have had his hand raised and walked away that night with the undisputed title. I get it. There were close rounds. I even saw something, by the way, where I thought it was Josh Taylor's own coach who said that he went back and rewatched the fight and he had to score 113, 112 in favor of Josh Taylor. If his own coach has a 1-point score, obviously he's biased, it's his guy. Who's to say that you couldn't have 1 or 2 swing rounds where you're going to give it to the other guy? So is it just a close, good fight? And by the way, not a particularly good fight, not a lot of clean rounds that were easy to score. So, to me, the controversy on this particular fight is much ado about nothing, but it does definitely open the conversation for what people in boxing can do to have better judging overall.
One thing you said before was that boxing is incredibly subjective, which I think is why fans love it, as well as sometimes they fume at it. But is there a way that boxing could be improved by taking away any subjectivity, or is that simply too implausible to try and think of a way that you could try and take away some of that?
I mean, as long as you have human beings in charge of deciding who they think won a particular round, it's always going to be subjective. And it's not the kind of thing where you can have, artificial intelligence or a computer, make the score of a fight, because you're not just basing it on who landed more punches. That's just a matter of volume, just a matter of numbers. It doesn't take into account, how hard the guy is punching. I mean, when I was sort of learning about boxing, and I grew up, in the late 70s and through the 80s, watching boxing. And I know a lot of ways I learned how to score boxing matches by listening to Harold Letterman, the great judge and unofficial judge on HBO, who before he was unofficial judge on HBO was an actual judge and scored plenty of big time championship fights. And, the criteria in professional boxing, by far and away, the most important thing is who's doing the more damage. So if a guy's landing, 10 punches and they're not particularly heavy shots, but one guy lands 2 shots and rocks the guy, who do you give the round to? I'm giving the round to the guy that did the damage, that he visibly hurt the man. Some people may not agree with that, but again, it's subjective. So you say, how can you improve it? I have my opinion about that. You could watch maybe that same exact round and be like, man, that other guy landed 10, 12 punches, landed a lot more than the other guy. I'm going to give it to him. I wouldn't agree with that, but I can't argue with your point of view. It's your opinion. Again, it's subjective, and that's why I love knockouts.
Do you think there's maybe a gap between what the fans are witnessing or how the fans are judging a fight compared to how experts and how ultimately, most important people, the judges are actually going about scoring fights?
Most definitely. I mean, one question I've been asked, any number of times throughout my career writing about professional boxing is, what is it different when you're ringside than when you're watching on TV? And for some fights, not really, but for many fights, it is a lot different. Because and it's not that you're seeing different. First of all, in professional boxing, the 3 judges are seated on different sides of the ring, so they're seeing the fight from a different angle than especially what we are as on television, where largely we're seeing the one shot overhead, shooting in one particular direction. Now maybe there's a few camera changes here and there, but by and large, we're seeing the same camera angle as what the broadcasters are seeing, because they shoot it from over the head of the broadcaster. So we're seeing that particular angle, but the judge sitting on the other side of the ring or on one of the sides of the ring is going to see it a little bit differently. Now, in general, over the course of a 12-round fight, they should see it generally the same. So, but there is a room for argument or differences of opinion in that respect. But the thing I say to people is, when you're sitting ringside at a fight, and again, I'm scoring it on damage done. That's the way I was taught. It's who's doing the damage. It's professional boxing. When you're ringside, you can feel the punches sometimes. You can feel who's doing the damage, who's hitting harder. Sometimes you even can hear the other fighter getting hit, making noise or wince, or see the facial expression. And that's all goes into how you decide in your mind who is getting the better of the other guy. If I see a guy get hit, several times and winces or makes a noise, and I can feel sort of the energy of the shot, that other guy is doing the damage. And if he's hitting the other guy back and he's walking through the punches and it's not doing anything, and he's just, swatting him away like it's a fly in the park, you're going to think about, what kind of damage is he doing? And so, there are differences when you're watching on TV, but that doesn't take into account something that is incredibly egregious. So in the case of Cattermole and Taylor, I've seen many people that have said in agreement with me that, yeah, it was a close fight. I thought Jack won. I thought Josh won, but yeah, it was 7-5 either way. Then there was some messiness with the point deductions plus the knockdown. And I can see it either way. But then there are other fights. I said Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley. There's plenty of others. We could talk about the famous draw between Chavez and Whitaker, or Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield, where you have 99.999% of the people who watched it, whether you're just a regular fan, a journalist, somebody involved in the sport, and every single person has it one way. And, 2 judges out of 3 might have it the other way. Then there's a problem.
So just to conclude it, when it comes to judging, do you think we simply just need better judges, that the scoring system is fine, and accept that with subjectivity, we'll have situations where some people will think it went one way and some people will think it went the other way, which we got the weekend? There's
always going to be that debate. The question is the person, or is the judge that had maybe the somewhat outlier score, what are they doing in other fights they're scoring? It's one thing you have an off night, but again, in boxing, an off night, you can alter the career of another fighter, which is why it's very important to be on the money every time. But my question would be, is if you're a judge that had an outlier score, to me, it's up to the commission or whatever the regulatory body is to look at that judge's overall body of work and decide if they need better training or if they shouldn't be doing this level of fights. Now, I've seen fights in Las Vegas where you see a judge having a horrible scorecard and immediately get assigned to another big fight 2 weeks later. I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, that's happened any number of times, and that kind of drives me a little bit crazy. But I do think that the regulatory bodies, that includes, not that the sanctioning bodies pick the judges, but they obviously have a lot to do with helping train the judges, that they need to look into that. If you see a judge that sticks out like a sore thumb time and time again, it might be time to sit that person down and have a talk with them. I did see something where the British board was, I forget which judge it was. Was it Ian John Lewis, perhaps? If I'm not mistaken.
Ian John Lewis, yeah.
So he was going to have a meeting with the folks at the British board, and I don't necessarily think it's like he's in trouble. It's just try to, we want to know from your perspective how you came up with the score that you had. If I'm not mistaken, I think he had it 114 to 111 in favor of Josh Taylor. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But the point is, it's not unreasonable to ask him to explain the card. Let's try to figure out what we're seeing compared to what you're seeing, and see if we can make our viewpoints closer together so we come up with a better, more consistent way of scoring that particular round or that particular fight.
Looking ahead now, AJ was speaking at the weekend, and he's confirmed that his main trainer will now be Angel Fernandez, somebody who's been in his camp for the last few years. You'll be aware that he was out in America working with a number of different trainers. Are you slightly surprised that he's, I guess, stuck closer to home and stuck with somebody that he has worked with over the last few years?
I can't say that I am surprised by that. I know Anthony a little bit. I've covered his whole career. I've interviewed him several times. I find him to be a creature of habit. And so this might have been the way to sort of split the baby, as they say. In other words, not going to make some dramatic wholesale change and suddenly bring in a brand new trainer who I've never worked with, other than perhaps, for a few weeks in a gym, when he came over to the United States and did the rounds. But by the same token, it is a new voice in the corner. It is a new person in charge, even though it's somebody I'm comfortable with. Obviously, he's worked with him, like you said, for 3 years. He's familiar with him. He's been around the camp. He's been in the gym. So maybe that could perhaps bring a little bit of a different point of view, light a little bit of a fire under him, that sort of thing. I'm not sure with him becoming the new head trainer. Does that mean that Rob is out completely? I haven't seen anything about that. Is Rob going to still be there as an assistant? I have a hard time seeing Rob stepping down to take a back seat. Maybe he will. I think those questions need to be answered. I don't think Anthony's come out and, I know he said it to some people at one of the shows over the weekend. I'd like to hear from him, though, in a more detailed fashion about why he made the change and what he expects from it and what the new role is for Rob, if there is one.
Let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine. Obviously, a major situation developing there, which will probably affect AJ as well when it comes to his next steps. How do you see what is going on in Ukraine, involving Russia and involving most countries in our part of the world? How do you see that affecting boxing over the next few months?
Well, it's just a horrible situation, obviously. Just a complete unprovoked attack by a dictator to just destroy everybody's lives that he's in the path of basically just horrible situation. And a lot of the professional boxers are caught up in that. And, Ukraine has produced lots of top quality fighters over the recent years. I mean, but right now, the two main fighters that you think of when you think of the elite Ukrainian fighters, they're great friends. They're both Olympic gold medalists. And that's Vasily Lomachenko and Alexander Usyk. They both are supposed to have very significant fights coming up. Obviously, as you mentioned, Usyk is supposed to have a rematch, defend his heavyweight titles that he won from AJ last fall. That fight, I guess, originally was supposed to be like in the April timeframe. It's been obviously pushed back with the scheduling of the Tyson Fury and Dillian White fight. But anyway, Eddie Hearn has been talking about May-ish, June-ish, and then you have Lomachenko, who is in the process of doing a deal to challenge George Kambosos for his lightweight world titles. That was a fight that was tentatively scheduled for June 4th in Melbourne, Australia, which is Georgia's home country. And so now you have both of these guys who are great fighters, but obviously also great patriots who have done what many of their regular old countrymen have done. What the former heavyweight champions of Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko are doing is they're staying and they're going to fight for their country. They're going to do what they have to do, take up arms. And I saw a video on CNN with Usyk subtitled. I can't personally verify it, but it sure as heck looked and sounded like him speaking in his own language, talking about how, look, I'm here to defend my country, and yes, I want to fight again and defend my heavyweight titles, but my country comes before a boxing match, and I can't argue with that. So right now, his situation makes the Anthony Joshua rematch kind of up in the air. I know that Eddie had some things to say about that when he was promoting the event with Chocolatito Gonzalez this past weekend in San Diego. Obviously, it's a sensitive situation. You can't force him to do the fight. He's involved in something far greater than a boxing match. It's the preservation of his life and his country. But at some point, he's going to have to figure out what he's going to do, and possibly maybe if they work out something with the Usyk side, maybe Josh will have to take another fight before he does the rematch. I don't think that would be the worst idea in the world, frankly, especially if he's going to go start working with a new trainer. And the same situation with Lomachenko. The deal's not 100%, signed, but all the points from the Loma side, as far as I am told, have been agreed to. But if he can't go to training camp or go to Australia because he's fighting, the fight for his country, then Kambosos is going to maybe have to look at some other alternatives. Perhaps, the Devin Haney fight comes back into play. But my thing is just, I hope nothing but the best for Lomachenko, Usyk, the Klitschkos, and everybody in Ukraine. It's a terrible situation, and I understand why these men would say that boxing, in the case of Usyk and Lomachenko, takes a backseat to what they're doing is far more important than a fight in terms of.
Yeah, it is a terrible situation, a very sensitive situation as well. I guess from AJ's point of view, he'll be looking at his next steps, and it does look like he may have to take an interim fight because he simply has been inactive for so long before that Usyk fight, and actually perhaps it may do him some favours fighting with Angel Fernandez for a fight before taking on what will be a huge challenge to win back his belts against Usyk. In terms of looking at potential interim opponents, who stands out for you? Who would make sense for AJ to take on? Because he's got such a huge name now. He's got to take on someone of some repute, you think?
I mean, I don't know if he has to. I think that, as long as he understands that if you are not fighting a very, very top opponent, that what you earn is going to reflect that. If he's willing, and by the way, he's been making, huge amounts of money, that for the sake of his career, of staying active, of getting used to a new trainer, perhaps he would take a step back financially from what he's used to making just to get the reps in and take on, again, not a bum or anything like that, but not necessarily like the elite contenders. Then I'm not sure who he would want to take on. There's obviously a lot of different fighters that fit the bill, whether they're coming from the UK or America or other places. I mean, if he wanted to make a big mega fight and forget about fighting for world titles, I mean, I'd love to see him, try to make a deal and fight Deontay Wilder. I know that's unlikely, but to me, I understand it's not for titles, but and Deontay is supposed to be coming back sometime, originally late spring. Now it looks like it's not going to be till the summer. But here's the point, though. Financially speaking, in my opinion, Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder with no titles on the line is still a bigger financial fight than his rematch with Usyk. So again, I don't think that's going to happen. That'll be up to Joshua, to his management, Freddie Cunningham and and Eddie Hearn and the Matchroom folks to, if he's going to take a fight that's not going to be Usyk in the next fight, while Usyk deals with his military situation and service in his country, there'll be opportunities and guys out there. It's but they're going to have to sit down and really figure out what he wants to do. And I'm assuming get the opinion of the new trainer also.